this was an interesting week for certain, and it really ended on Friday with the employment situation report. And I look over at Danny and go, "What's your employment situation?"
He's like, "It's good. It's good."
The fact that you're asking, I'm now troubled.
Yeah, no. We love you. So the employment situation report came out, and it wasn't really great, Brian.
No, it wasn't. It was kind of a mixed bag. You had the headline number of 151,000 payrolls created. The private sector payroll creation was decent, but not great. We did see a decline in federal employment numbers that went down 10,000. It's not showing the full DOGE effect yet. So that Department of Government Efficiency, where on February 14th, I think that was the date that they sent out that email.
Yeah, can't say that about Tesla, but we'll come back to that.
Oh, gosh, yeah. That'll be a fun one because this survey was done the week of February 12th. So a lot of the federal layoffs, if they are happening, those will show up in next month's report instead. So this one, overall, I would say that it was good from the very high level. Getting into the details, one of the things that I really took note of was a rather large increase in the number of people who are working full-time, but they've added on a part-time job. And that's kind of interesting.
Gig economy.
Yeah, it really, that's, I think, what it boils down to. In a time of economic uncertainty.
If I call an Uber, my PhD is sitting across the studio from me. He's not going to pick me up, am I?
Well, funny story about that. When I was in St. Louis a couple years ago, I had an Uber driver who had a PhD. I was talking to him. Well, it was in art history.
Okay, so, not economics.
Yeah,
right,
so
a little different.
Nothing against a PhD in art history, but if you can't land a job at like an auction house, a museum, whatever, yeah, but he was making pretty good money. And he was a fun guy to talk to. But there is signs that businesses are cutting back hours a little bit because they don't necessarily want to commit to expansion plans if suddenly we do get some disruptive change, April 2nd. And I think that's
April
what everybody's
2nd,
waiting
disruptive change you're talking about is tariffs. So let's get to it. So this week, obviously, we saw what happened with the address to Congress. It was funny to see one side sit and the other side get up, and no matter what the topic was. But what I really want to talk about is tariffs and really what's going to happen. At this point, we think that there is going to be another delay with Mexico and Canada, right? Yeah. And we've seen that, but we think about what's happening out of Canada, and that is oil, right? And right now, crude is at a 3-year low. So even if these tariffs do come to fruition, and we'll see if they actually do, if they come to fruition, oil prices are lower. Yeah. So that's really not as much as everyone's consternation is.
Yeah, it might not hurt as much. Right. That's right. Because if it's a 10% tariff, but the price has already declined significantly, it's like, okay, we kind of reset back to where we were a few months ago.
Right. And I want to come back to that in not only the prices, but also on the dollar. And we'll come back to that. And secondarily with Mexico. And of course, we're talking about what happened years ago was this U.S. trade agreement. I think we should start with explaining that because it went into effect in Trump's first term.
It did. So in Trump's first term, and it became effective, I think it was like January 1st, 2020, but he renegotiated NAFTA. NAFTA, for people who remember, 1994, that was the North American Free Trade Agreement, and it was supposed to really, kind of eliminate the borders for trade between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And there were a lot of problems with NAFTA. So President Trump in 2018 renegotiated it, also rebranded it as the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, so the USMCA. And it expanded the number of goods that were included in there. It also addressed issues like intellectual property. It also dealt with financial services. And I think pretty importantly, it created some requirements as far as the origination of goods. So, for example, cars. In order to be compliant with NAFTA, if a car is made in Canada or in Mexico, as long as 75% of the parts and cost were kind of incurred in North America, it's compliant. But they didn't want a situation, which we have seen with steel and aluminum, where, say, China makes something, sends it to Mexico, Mexico slaps a label on it, does something, and sends it into the United States free of the tariff. To avoid that, that's really what USMCA did. And so now President Trump has said as long as the goods are still compliant with USMCA, that they can come into the United States tariff-free at least until April 2nd. So April 2nd, that might change. We have to see how much progress is made on immigration and drug trafficking, because that's really the point of these tariffs on Canada and Mexico, is to deal with immigration and drug trafficking.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So people are looking through this tariffs and one-dimensional way. That's the feedback that I'm getting, which is, it means higher prices. Well, if you're using this economic tool, and I've been saying this now since November, since he got elected, right? If you're using an economic tool to get non-economic outcomes, for example, as you just talked about, drug war and reciprocal trade agreements and all of these other things, and stopping fentanyl from coming in and immigration, he's using these tools to get that. And I'm not promoting the idea, I'm explaining the idea. And we do this with our clients today because they're up in arms because they might read something that says it means higher prices. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean. The guy is negotiating. I've been saying this now for months. He's negotiating with Canada. He's negotiating with Mexico. The auto companies, the steel companies, the energy companies are all part of this. So let's let this play out. But I do find it interesting that companies are jacking up their prices because they have cover. They have cover right now.
That's the danger with it.
Right? And so that is where prices are higher, because guys and gals are sitting around a boardroom and saying, let's raise our prices because we think there will be tariffs, and they are passing that on. Now, if these tariffs don't go into place, guess what's going to happen? Prices are going to be higher and tariffs won't go into place. Folks, this is the reason why you have to have active management. You have to have people looking out for your portfolio, making sure it is lining up with your goals.